Hello, everybody, and welcome to Madden Benz Unfiltered for this week. As you can see, brought to us by Rush to Crush Cancer. More than a bike ride, it's a mission. Join us May 19th for the Rush to Crush Cancer bike ride. To register, go to rushtocrushcancer.org and help us in the fight against cancer. Join the ride. Tim Benz, Mark Madden with you. Mark on today, 3 to 6 on 105.9 The X, as he will be throughout the week. The return of the Penguins happening this week after the All-Star break, their long absence from the ice. We're going to get to that in just a second. Mark and I talked at great length about that on the podcast. Lots of hockey-related items in the podcast. We're going to spend most of this conversation about hockey as well. But, Mark, I got to start with something football-related. I didn't notice this. I hadn't seen it before you and I taped up the podcast for this morning. I wrote about it for the Trib, and it was Arthur Smith's interview on Steelers.com, where they talked for 7 minutes and 38 seconds. And the only player who was mentioned by name was Kenny Pickett. And boy, it sure sounds like Arthur Smith is really excited about working with Kenny Pickett. And just about only Kenny Pickett. Like, no mention of the quarterback who pulled them back from the playoff elimination precipice in Mason Rudolph at all. Where is this alleged competition coming from Kenny Pickett? And why were they selling that a couple weeks ago and already making it sound like Kenny is the lock number one?
There is no competition. Kenny is a lock. And the purpose of that interview on the Steeler website, I mean, I find Missy Matthews delightful, but she's a shill by the nature of her employment. That was designed to get over that Kenny Pickett's the guy and Arthur Smith has faith in him, period. None of what was said or wasn't said surprised me even a little bit.
No, I wasn't surprised. It's just, to me, for anybody who bought the notion that they wanted to keep Mason Rudolph and have it be an open competition, I was dubious the moment Mike Tomlin suggested that. I'm even more so now. And I'm even, frankly, Mark, dubious of how much they want to keep him in the first place, even as a backup, as capable as he might be in that position.
Like I keep saying, they don't want anyone there who can challenge Pickett because Pickett is so fragile that he'll fold in any competition. Just like he freaked out and refused to dress as a backup in Seattle. Just like he said he learned nothing by watching the game when Rudolph played. He just doesn't want any distraction from, hey, I'm the guy. Just like a Pitt when he was Van Wilder and was the quarterback forever. So this is all by design. The Steelers don't want to pressure Kenny. They don't want anybody clamoring for Mason Rudolph if Pickett's the starter and Rudolph's on the bench. So they'll get a generic backup. I don't know who it's going to be. Somebody like Josh Dobbs would certainly ring true. But the situation at quarterback, to me, is very clear. And as I wrote for a Trib column I just submitted, if they were serious about winning now, if there was any urgency, like the owner says, they would go get Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson or even Justin Fields, because all three would be clear upgrades. But it's not about now. It's about doing things their way and never being wrong. Being right is a much bigger priority than winning is to the Steelers.
Yeah, the whole urgency thing is baloney to me, because I don't know what unless they make some splash move in free agency that we're not considering.
They're not going to. How often do they do that?
Or make a giant move up the draft board for someone of particular import. I'm not talking about three spots for a lineman.
When they do make splash moves, they turn out to be splash moves after the fact. When is a guy they signed as a free agent somebody who made you say at that moment of signing, wow, we got so-and-so? I remember we got James Farrier. He was pretty good. He turned out to be great. You know, Jeff Harding's he's a center. The one guy I will say they brought in, and how long ago is this, where you knew that this, okay, it's a big name, was Kevin Green. And again, how long ago was that?
Yeah, that was, I think I was still in high school when that happened, when they brought in Kevin Green. But the whole urgency.
I still cared then, Tim.
Urgency to me, I don't know how they think that's defined when they're bringing back the coach. They extended the defensive coordinator. They're bringing in an offensive coordinator who thinks like the coach, and they're doing everything in their power to position that the quarterback who started last year but got benched is going to get his job back. How is that at all urgent in any way, shape, or form?
Well, Tim, that's what they said about Lou Graham. But yeah, I mean, it's such a con. And they have the stooge media to support them. So, I mean, like, it's it makes me stutter when I talk about it. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's so obviously a mess, but it's being presented as a plan.
All right, so Steelers fans want to hear from you on what you heard from Arthur Smith in his first interview. You know, I guess two other names, well, a name. I take that back. No, they did say the name Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill was mentioned in the interview. Mason Rudolph may not have been, but Ryan Tannehill was. You're talking about backup quarterbacks, Mark. What about that? Would they bring him in, or is that just too obvious of a move to make Pickett, again, feel comfortable?
I wrote that they should, but they won't. People, again, would be clamoring for him to go in, and they would be talking about his familiarity with Arthur Smith during camp. It's just, they have no ambition, Tim. They pretend to, but they don't. They don't have ambition. They are so busy trying to maintain who they are that they have no interest in being better.
You know, I think about Tannehill coming, and I could see that same reaction. You know, the thing actually, Mark, that jumped out to me as a big concern was when we talked to our former colleague, John Burton, who used to work at Channel 4, now in Nashville. He talked about the premise of the passing game being rhythmic, on time, put the ball in the right spot. And if the receiver isn't there, that's not on you as a quarterback. That's on them as a receiver. Oh, goody. Because, you know, George Pickens is renowned for that. And I know how great Deontay Johnson is on getting himself open, but it wasn't like he and Pickett were on the same page a bunch last year.
And they're both real big on accountability, too, Deontay and Pickens. Yeah, Tim, it's going to be the same old stuff. Okay, the receivers are going to go walk all over the coordinator. They're going to question the quarterback. That might cause trouble this year. I think if Pickett's the quarterback and Rudolph's gone and it goes bad, I think Deontay and Pickens will pop off about it in veiled terms and maybe not so veiled terms.
You know, there's a lot of this, the hire with Smith, that I actually think in theory could work. But the theory that he can pump a year out of Kenny Pickett, like the two that he got out of Tannehill, just feels like it's so far in the night to me. Like, that's just such a...
Well, and here's the other thing, too. If this is Arthur Smith is a hire for right now. I will agree with that because he's a guy who comes in. He has the same vision as the head coach offensively, and he is qualified to work. He's at least qualified. Let me cut myself off at the pass. Unlike his predecessors, Coach Randy and Matt Canada and Eddie Faulkner, he's qualified to be an NFL offensive coordinator, and that's a nice change. He also has an offense that will fit the weapons they currently have. So you won't have to overhaul personnel. He can make the best use of what he's got. So that is a hire for right now. But Pickett isn't a quarterback for right now. And who's going to tell Cam Hayward they're trying to develop Kenny and it might take a while? Who's going to tell TJ Watt, who is near the end of his prime, that, hey, just a few more years, you know, to a guy who's never won a playoff game? It is such a flawed situation. And the most flawed thing might be that no one wants to say it's flawed.
All right, let's get to some hockey talk. Again, I want to hear from Steelers fans about the offensive coordinator, about the interview. It certainly sounds like the decision has already been made that Kenny Pickett is going to be the starter regardless of what you were told previously, at least if you want to read the tea leaves in that interview, and I don't think it's hard to do.
Who said anything previously that was different?
Mike Tomlin, when he suggested that there would be real competition.
When did he say that? I must just have taken that so not seriously. I glossed over it.
Well, he said it like 3 times during his season-ending press conference, and he said it was the
Wow.
goal.
See what you can ignore when you just don't believe somebody?
Like, I mean, he said, for instance, they wanted to keep Rudolph, and they did think that he could provide competition for Kenny Pickett. Now, he added the caveat of we don't know if he's going to be here because he's a free agent. But, you know, he has talked at length a couple times. I think he did it on Steelers.com as well about the theory that maybe that was Art who talked about the competition for Pickett. But they both make it sound like it's not been his job that's given to him, but it has been.
I don't trust anything on Steelers.com. Again, no offense to those people. I think they're great. They're good employees for the Steelers. But, like, how long was that Arthur Smith interview? 7.5 minutes?
Yeah.
How long do you think that was edited down from to make sure everything was said exactly as desired?
That's a real good point, Mark. And this is maybe just me, you know, somebody who went to school.
Why isn't he talking to the regular media?
Yeah, he hasn't spoken to the regular media yet. So when the first foray into him being the offensive coordinator, the first public comments are made from a pumping house organ at Steelers.com, when you have the first interview done with the website, it's going to feel filtered. It's going to feel sanitized.
Maybe you can go on Pat McAfee and Pat can lob softballs at him. Him and that guy with the cowboy hat. They can say, bro, your offense, bro, I don't know. That offense, bro, I don't know.
But the thing is, like, what if Missy Matthews really did ask him about Mason Rudolph and they cut it out? I don't know. It's 7 minutes and 38. You can make that interview as long as you want. It's your website. If it's 15 minutes, it's 15 minutes. If it's 20 minutes, it's 20 minutes. Show the whole thing. Or if it's cut down, it makes you wonder.
To be fair, that's all the marks expect now, Tim. They don't expect hard hitting. They don't expect independent journalism. They're perfectly content with that. Like all the fan sites who sadly are superseding the real sites in the purvey of some. They just took that 7.5-minute interview and ran with it in the rampant ringing optimism they feel it somehow provided.
Yeah, the biggest frustration that I've had during my time over the last 15 years is how much I've learned people seek propaganda. I hate that. I hate that people actively seek propaganda and want to be told what to think.
That's how totalitarian governments rise to power.
Let's get to the Penguins, Mark, because I did want to get to a lot of hockey today, so let's do that. The Pens coming back from the break. Your level of optimism, the gambling outlets out there still see them as a favorite to make the postseason. I think it's 50-50 at absolute best, and I still feel like I'm being optimistic.
I think it's more like 70-30 against.
Yeah.
But I can see why they say that, because points percentage, the Penguins, I think, would be in the playoffs right now. They have a bunch of games in hand on pretty much everybody. But I'm not sure that's a good thing because, A, you have to win those games in hand. And, B, having so many games left means there's going to be a pile-up of said fixtures, a lot of back-to-backs, not least in March, when your older team is even older. So, I'm not sure that the advantage they think they have actually bodes well. But, I never take the odds as what Vegas really believes. You know that.
Right,
it's
because
based
the money's
on trying to get, more money on every possible combination to profit by the VIG. So I'm sure the Penguins bring in a lot of money to bet. And if they were 70-30 against, they'd bring in too much money one way and not the other.
Mark, what did you think of some of the criticism that Crosby took for not showing up for that dippy player draft?
Absolutely ridiculous. Here's a guy that's not done nothing except put his best foot forward to represent that league for 20 years. Him and Ovi have carried it. In some respects, they still do, because Connor McJesus has such sourpuss negative type charisma. I think that it was just an absolute shame that he got crap for skipping the goofy fantasy draft. That's all he missed, right?
Well, he's there dishing out assists on the slap shot during the
he was out there on the ice with honorary captain Justin Bieber, who is such a groupie. Then again, he's been on both sides of the groupie fence, Tim. I envy him in some ways. How about the captains, the celebrity captains, proving that Canadian celebrity, that term is an oxymoron. Okay? Although I do respect Will Arnett. I wish Lou Redwood would have been doing color on the games.
So I was kind of thinking about this topic.
Kate McRae, Tim.
Yeah.
She was an honorary captain. I mean, she's hot.
Mm-hmm.
You know how I know she's hot? I had to Google to find out who she was.
Yeah, exactly. She's supposed to be like the Canadian Taylor Swift. Is that how that's supposed to go, or what?
I don't know. She doesn't look like a Scarecrow and Lucille Ball mated, so I'll give her that.
The two events, I'm not even going to call them games, events over the weekend, the All-Star events and the Pro Bowl, like when you consider Crosby doing or not doing any part of that, I mean, what does the league do anything to resuscitate that weekend anyway? It stinks.
Well, that's the one good thing. I'm not a big fan of international hockey, but I'm glad that it's superseding All-Star weekend the next 2 years via that utterly insane Four Nations tournament, which excludes Russia, which makes it an invalid competition, and then the Olympics in 2026.
What would they do if Russia could play? Would it be like a Six Nations tournament or an Eight Nations tournament? Are they just using the fact that Russia can't play as an excuse to keep it small?
I don't know. I mean, why can't Russia play?
Well, I think we know they can play. They're being decided that they can't. They are being told that they can't.
But they're one of the top 2 hockey powers in history. If they don't play, any tournament is invalid. Period. It just is.
Well, back to the Penguins, Mark. We talked about the odds a little bit. Their quality of play, their ability to improve, moves that could be made. Like, for instance, are they going to take this all the way to the trade deadline with Gensel, or do you think it's a foregone conclusion already that they're keeping him, despite what we just saw for Edholm go last week?
I think they're going to keep him. And I don't think Sid is consulted, nor do I think he demands. I think they try to anticipate what keeps him happy.
Yeah,
in fact, I know he doesn't demand. Like if they decide to keep Jake for Sid's sake, I am cutting Sid out of the picture in that decision, even though he's the major impetus for it, because it's not left up to him.
Mm-hmm.
But they're trying to sign a new contract, after next year. I just don't think they're going to move him. I think they're going to come up with a lot of reasons to not move him. And I bet the GM disagrees with all those reasons, but I just have a feeling that's how it's going to happen. When Rutherford and Tocchet and Alvin in Vancouver didn't get him, although Lindholm is a center, and they needed a center more than a wing.
Right.
That made me wonder if Jake's out there at all.
Do you think that was a representative return for Edholm, and by extension, would something similar be a representative return for Gensel?
I thought that was great return for Lindholm.
I think that defenseman might be.
Is it Lindholm or Edholm? You keep saying Edholm.
Oh, is it Lindholm? I'm sorry.
Yeah, nobody cares. But yeah, I mean, if I could get that for
Elias,
Jake, I would. If I could get that for Jake, I would.
The really good the defenseman, the kid that's leading the OHL in scoring for defensemen, and is
they got a first rounder, a very top prospect, and that mercurial winger. You had his name last night.
Yeah, the guy that he's got a big salary hit. Like, he's got it was partially a dump, but it's also one of these things where, like,
he had a bunch of goals last year, and Tocchet just didn't like him this year.
Yeah, I mean, they can pump and dump him. Like they can turn him around, potentially try to get a little bit more out of him, and then get rid of the contract and get even more prospects if that's what they want to do in Calgary.
Yes, I think that's a great trade. Would I take the same return for Gensel? Yeah, I sure would. But I just don't. I mean, Tim, what's your sense? Do you think it's going to happen?
I think it's if they're 50-50, they're not going to move them. If they're still where they are right now by the trade deadline, they're not going to move them. Like, I think the only way
unless they lose like 8 of 10 between now and then, or
I thought they're going to be out of it.
Andre Kuzmenko.
Yeah, they've got to be gone, Mark.
I think run the Pittsburgh Marathon. Used to administer. Andre Kuzmenko.
I think they've got to be completely and totally out of the picture. Like, if there's any possible way they could still make it, they're going to keep Gensel. I just don't think they could feel like they could sell that. Well, to your point.
Jay Larry, sidebar, do you remember Jay Larry Kuzmenko?
No, I don't.
He was this guy, like a hippie type guy. He used to run, not literally run, but he was the founder and administrator originally of the Pittsburgh Marathon. Okay, and he was a great guy. I hope he's still around. I really like Jay Larry, but I was on 2 separate occasions in Blush with him.
Really?
Yeah, and we were discussing.
Did a gun go off?
What's that?
Did a gun go off by any chance?
Did that happen?
Yeah, that was not that establishment. It was the other establishment.
I've aged out, Tim, so I'm not keeping up, but.
No, you talked about it on your show, the love gun at cheerleaders.
Oh, no, that's right. She shot herself in the leg.
Yeah, she
pulled
that's right.
That's no shotgun. That's my love gun. I may have hit a few in the leg myself, Tim, back in my day. Anyway, but Jay Larry, we were talking about music, right?
Yeah.
So Jay Larry, who's like really connected, he put me on the phone once with Ainsley Dunbar, who's a friend of his, I think the original drummer for Journey.
Okay.
But also a really high regarded drummer. Also the drummer on the Whitesnake 1987 album, the big hit with Still of the Night, and on 2 UFO albums. So how great was that? I could barely make him out in the din of Blush, but it was still great. And even better, I'm not a fan, but this was pretty cool. Put me on the phone with Bono.
Bono
from U2.
So you talked, what'd you guys talk, what did you and Bono talk about?
I was in a strip joint and drunk, Tim. I don't know.
Like, did you solve world peace? Because I think that's what he tries to do.
No, it was like just, hey, how you doing? Jay Larry, he's great. Gotta go. Naked girls, bye.
All right, let's get to some comments here.
As Kelso once said, when Eric Foreman was pouring his heart out about his torture relationship with Donna when they were at his bachelor party in his strip bar, Kelso cut him off and said, hey, Phil Donahue, live nudes.
Eric says, what's with some media dopes insisting Kenny Pickett is actually better than Brock Purdy, but that he's handcuffed by a bad system? Is the denial about this guy really that profound?
Yes. Although I don't hear that many people saying that. Do you, Tim?
Not anymore. No. I think it's pretty clear now that if you put Pickett in for Purdy in San Francisco wouldn't be as good. Would Pickett be better? Yeah, Pickett would be better than what he is here.
Well, of course he would, because of who he has to work with and his coordinator. But it's not like that's the make or break of his failure in Pittsburgh. The make or break of his failure in Pittsburgh is he's not very good.
Frank says,
the guy has a pop gun arm and is confused in the pocket. What else is there?
Same media that thinks Tomlin is great and McCarthy must go. I think he's talking about the media that's advancing the Kenny Pickett point. Yeah, that's
the agenda that dares not speak its name, Tim. By the way, I also we talked about Brock Purdy, okay? Am I talking too fast today? I had like 5 cups of coffee because I got up late. Randy Bauman brought this up on the DV Morning Show. San Francisco, they've had some decent quarterbacks, but the minute they conclude that he's not good enough, they cut bait and move on to the next one. Case in point, Alex Smith, Garoppolo, Trey Lance. Some of them did pretty good. In particular, Garoppolo got him to a Super Bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the minute they concluded that the guy wasn't good enough, they got a different quarterback. And now they're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they've cut bait on first-round draft choices before. They did with Devin Bush. They did with Jarvis Jones. They did with Troy Edwards. I mean,
quarterback's different, though, Tim, because you're very visibly proven wrong at the most important position in sports, and they don't like to be wrong.
Yeah, but to that point, though, Mark, it's also equally as damning and equally as obvious if you do keep rolling out the mistake. You can hide Devin Bush as a mistake. You can hide Jarvis Jones as a mistake. You keep trying to prove yourself right at quarterback, that's a hell of a lot more damning.
Tim, I'm not so sure they did a good job hiding Devin Bush.
Well, yeah, I guess other offenses did do a good job of finding him.
That was fairly costly to my recollect.
Larry says it's like them thinking Woodley or Blackledge were worth a bleep when they picked them up.
How'd that get on?
I don't know. I just saw I thought he was talking about Lamar Woodley. I'd forgotten about David Woodley.
No. I mean the curse word. What kind of shop we running here? Then again, I did just talk about my love gun, so.
Richard says typical Steelers to likely waste another season in trying to convince themselves that Pickett is a legitimate NFL starter, which he isn't. It's not just about convincing themselves. It's about trying to convince all of us, too.
Oh, no. It's about not admitting they're wrong. And I couldn't put it more succinctly or say it often enough. By the way, Tim, you know what's incredible? I just realized.
What?
That Bono and Ainsley Dunbar story, this is the first time for some reason I've ever told that.
Yeah, I can't believe I've never heard that you spoke with Bono.
I never told that on the air, but it's for sure true. And you know how you can tell I didn't make it up? If I made it up, it wouldn't have been Bono. I mean, I can't stand you two.
You told me, though, that you sort of, by the end of Let It Get Loud, you liked the edge a little bit, or it might get loud.
Oh, no, I hated the edge even more at the end of It Might Get Loud.
Really? I thought you loved that flick.
I like the fact, I loved the doc. It was great. But I like the fact that Jack White totally idolized Jimmy Page and was totally dismissive of the edge.
Oh, you mean like he cozied up to Jimmy Page more and more?
Yeah, kind of ignored Edge.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Edge shouldn't have been on that documentary. All he does is hit the frickin' Echoplex and bang, 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 bang.
Bill says since we signed...
By the way, the highlight of that doc was at the end when they did the wait by the band.
Mm-hmm.
With the
when
harmonies.
They all jammed at the end?
Yeah. And the Edge is saying to Jimmy Page, hey, you got to sing harmonies. And Jimmy Page goes, nope, not going to happen. And he goes like, well, it doesn't work without, three. Jimmy goes, going to have to.
I also like the scene in that where they went back to wherever they recorded, was it Led Zeppelin 3? And he was
Headley
standing.
Grange.
He was standing at the bottom of the stairs, kind of simulating the echo of the when the levee breaks. The opening.
Yeah, because they were there. I think they were there for 3 and 4, for sure 4 at Headley Grange.
And they pushed Bottom's drum set into the bottom of that little atrium there to get the echo for when the levee breaks.
Right. Which got like that almost doubled the drums on levee breaks.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Jimmy Page is my number one bucket list interview. If you said to me, you can interview one more person, then quit happy, it would be Jimmy Page.
Bill says, since we signed Puljujarvi, does that spell a definite trade of Gensel at the deadline?
I don't think they're going to see Puljujarvi as an even swap for Gensel. But I do think he's worth putting in the lineup. He apparently is over his injuries. He was scoring goals at Wilkes. He's cheap. He does have top 6 skills in theory. Although, you know what they're doing, Tim? They're playing him third line.
Oh, of course they are.
Then again, the third line is Eller, Raquel, and him. So maybe they're trying to, divvy the stuff up. So maybe, I don't know. I just would put him. I'd put him with Malkin. But they're not going to.
Well, I think Seth Rorba was the one that tweeted this out. That's an all first-round draft choice third line that the Penguins have assembled.
Riley Smith, I think, is in too. It's going to be him, Gino, and O'Connor. And they sent Pustonen back down. Now, the proof's in the pudding. Pustonen had 1 goal, I think, in 22 games. But that's because they dropped him to bottom 6, as I predicted they would. And that's not his way. As I said, it wasn't.
This one comes to us from Sean, who says, who would you rather have, Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid?
That's actually a really good question. And if this were Canadian Talk Radio, I could get a couple hours out of that.
Somebody else asked. It might have been Sean, too. It might have been one of his questions. He also said thoughts on Frank Saravalli. Was Frank Saravalli one of the leaders pushing the...
He was the guy. He's the guy. I like Frank, okay? I'm not going to rip him personally. I think he was way off base in his criticism of Sid.
Okay.
But I do like Frank, and he's a real good hockey journalist.
The third thing, and this might be the most important thing that Sean posted, was that Tate McRae girl is hot. She is very attractive.
She is hot. She's hotter than Taylor Swift.
And there was also that one picture that kept going around the internet, Mark, where Tate McRae was looking at Sidney Crosby like he was a snack. I don't know if you saw that, where she was standing behind him and just looking dreamily at him from behind.
I got a story to tell about one of my hockey moms back when I coached deck hockey.
It wasn't Tate McRae's mom, was it?
And if any of my players from that era are listening right now, they're thinking, "Oh, I remember that."
Larry says that song highlights Bonham's power when the levee breaks. My favorite drum intro or drum part from Led Zeppelin was oh gosh, now I can't remember which one it was, but that was a good one. Song remains the same. That was a great intro.
You know what? The most underrated Zeppelin song ever, and one of my top 5 for sure. I use the instrumental as a background music for my show. Is "Sick Again," which was their Valentine to the LA groupies. And
was that on Presents?
No, double album, Physical Graffiti.
Oh, okay, all right.
And there's a drum fill in the middle that leads to the guitar break. It's like 10 seconds of like just mass destruction. So yeah, Bonham's the best drummer ever. Anybody who says otherwise is wrong. There's some musical questions about which there isn't a debate. That's one of them.
Real fast before we go, are you picking in the Super Bowl? I got Kansas City to cover and to win.
I haven't decided yet for sure, but I think San Francisco is marginally better. But Kansas City's second half defense, they cover the second half under every game. Like they've covered the second half under this season, like all but 2 games. I forget the exact number, but it's overwhelming. And I can't bet against Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I did that the previous week, and I got burned by it, so I'm not going to do it again.
But I bet on Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl against Brady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Big,
right. Yeah.
Which led me to sit in the Circus Sportsbook where I was an invited guest for their premier Super Bowl party.
Yes.
Eating really great wings and nachos and just lamenting friggin' Tom Brady. And Bruce Arians. I'm like their after 17 beers in Tampa's like, BA, what are you doing? I thought we were friends.
All right, that's going to do it for us here at Madden Benz Unfiltered. We will be back next week to wrap up the Super Bowl, again brought to you by Rush to Crush. It's not just a bike ride, it's a mission. Join us May 19th for the Rush to Crush Cancer bike ride. To register, rushtocrushcancer.org, and help us in the fight against cancer. Join the ride.